Sometimes, a scream is the last sound before silence, and sometimes it means everything is already over. It was a quiet Sunday morning in September 2021 in Derbyshire, England, when police received a call that would haunt even the most hardened officers. What they found inside the house was beyond comprehension. A pregnant mother, Terry Harris, her two children, 13-year-old John Paul and 11-year-old Lacey, and Lacey's friend Connie, just 11 years old. All of them brutally murdered under the same roof. And that wasn't the only horror. Signs of a sickening assault were also found. The one responsible for this nightmare? Terry's partner, 32-year-old Damien Bendall. And when police found him, he was disturbingly calm, as if nothing had happened. Damien Bendall was born in 1990 in Swindon, Wiltshire. But his arrival into this world wasn't a blessing. It was more like a warning. From a very young age, his life was marked not by love or hope, but by chaos. Raised in the shadow of a family plagued by addiction and crime, Damien never stood a chance. The place he called home wasn't a sanctuary. It was a prison that fed the darkness inside him. Before he even hit puberty, he was already disturbing his neighborhood, vandalizing shops, tormenting animals, and committing petty crimes. While most kids were playing with toys, Damien was looking for new ways to cause pain, first to others, and eventually to himself. By the time he hit his teens, drugs had him in a chokehold, hooked on heroin and cocaine. His addiction only pushed him toward more violent and destructive behavior. He wasn't just spiraling, he was accelerating into something far worse. In June of 2010, the monster inside him broke loose again. Looking for an easy target, Damien followed a man walking home alone. But when the man fought back, Damien snapped. He didn't just try to rob him, he beat him brutally. Even after the man lost consciousness, Damien kept attacking. This wasn't theft, this was cruelty for pleasure. He enjoyed the pain he caused. He was finally arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison. But prison didn't reform him. It didn't even slow him down. In June 2015, Damien set his sights on a small corner shop in Swindon. It seemed like an easy score. Just a 62-year-old man behind the counter. He pulled a knife and demanded the cash, but the shopkeeper wasn't ready to give in. He grabbed a golf club from behind the counter and swung it at Damien with all his strength. Damien panicked and ran, empty-handed. Police responded quickly and tracked him down. By August 2015, he was behind bars again for another 3-year sentence. But once again, freedom came. And once again, he wasted it. Released in October 2018, he broke his parole conditions within weeks. Drinking heavily, spiraling fast, he was locked up yet again. After serving another year, he walked free in August 2019. But this time, the darkness he carried wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly. In March 2020, 7 months after meeting Terry Harris, 35-year-old Damien Bendall began a relationship with her. Terry had recently separated from her husband of 14 years, the father of her 2 children, 13-year-old John Paul and 11-year-old Lacey. Seeking a fresh start, she turned to popular dating websites, where she soon crossed paths with Damien. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and within a few months of meeting, Damien moved in with Terry in Sheffield. Despite his criminal history, Terry was completely smitten and believed he deserved a second chance to turn his life around. However, it quickly became evident that Damien had no intention of changing. Upon moving in with Terry, he resumed his criminal activities. In May 2020, just 2 months after meeting Terry online, he set fire to a car in Swindon while under the influence of alcohol and other drugs. The police were aware that capturing him was only a matter of time. One of the reasons Damien was so eager to move to Sheffield was to be with Terry. The man Terry had met online was vastly different from the one who had moved in with her and her children. He refused to work, expecting Terry to support the family financially, while he squandered the remaining money on alcohol and drugs. Terry's friends and family began to notice changes in her behavior. She became more withdrawn, anxious, and overly cautious. Damien monitored her every move, controlling where she went and who she interacted with. He attempted to dominate every aspect of her life. Terry's mother intervened multiple times, pleading with her daughter to leave Damien. However, Terry insisted she was in love with him. The situation became even more complicated when Terry discovered she was pregnant with Damien's child. It seemed she had resolved to stay with him through both the good and bad times, even though the bad times appeared more likely. In May 2021, the police finally apprehended Damien Bendall once again. A year after the arson, the authorities managed to track Damien down and arrested him. He was brought before a judge, and as part of his sentence, a parole report was prepared, which would help the court assess an appropriate punishment. The purpose of the report was to provide the judge with an accurate background on Damien's past criminal history, the likelihood of reoffending, and the danger he posed to society. This report should have been a damning one, considering the long list of crimes dating back to his childhood, a history of violence, and even more shockingly, suspicions raised by previous parole officers that he posed a risk to women and children and that he had been suspected of caring for underage children. However, it seemed that none of this information even made it into the report given to the judge. Instead, the new parole officer wrote that, despite Damien's criminal past, there were signs that he wanted to change and could be rehabilitated. The officer even stated that the risk of him causing serious harm to his wife or children was low. As a result of this glowing report, the judge decided to suspend Damien's sentence and placed him under house arrest with his pregnant wife and children. On September 17th, 2021, the weekend began unusually peaceful for Terry and her children. Damien had gone to his usual drug party, leaving Terry alone at home with the kids. She aimed to provide them with a calm environment, away from Damien's chaotic world. That evening, Terry's daughter Lacey had invited her best friend over, and everything seemed fine. The next morning, the children decided to set up a sweet stand outside to raise money for cancer research. They spent a joyful few hours, and as the day neared its end, Lacey's friend prepared to leave. Lacey, however, wasn't ready to part ways and asked her mother if she could stay another night. Her mother agreed, and Lacey was thrilled. Throughout the evening, Terry kept in regular contact with her daughter, receiving reassuring messages. But as the night wore on, the tranquility was shattered. Around midnight, Damien returned home from his drug binge. The exact cause of the ensuing chaos remains unclear, but within a short time, Damien began his horrific assault. Between 9:30 and 10 o'clock p.m., he entered the house wielding a hammer and attacked each family member. Terry, pregnant with her unborn child, tried to escape the violence. The children scattered throughout the house, hiding wherever they could. Damien methodically searched room by room, finding each child and delivering fatal blows with the hammer. After attacking 11-year-old Lacey, he carried her to her mother's room, where, in front of Terry, he committed a heinous act. To further degrade her, he positioned a mirror so he could watch himself. After murdering all 4 family members, Damien took a bag containing a gaming console and more drugs and was captured on security cameras. He showed no signs of panic or remorse. Later, he hailed a taxi and returned to Terry's house, telling the driver he had had a crazy night. When Damien arrived at Terry's house, he used her phone to call the police. His conversation was oddly calm, but the gravity of the situation could not be hidden. In the phone call, he acknowledged the bloodstains and stab wounds on his body, but still did not shy away from taking responsibility for the horrific act he had just committed. He confessed to having murdered each member of his family, though his cold demeanor suggested he lacked any real remorse for what he had done. When the police arrived, they noted that Damien remained strangely composed. Despite stab wounds to his chest, no visible blood loss, he continued to confess to the brutal killings of his family members. He admitted that they had no chance of defending themselves against his assault. Eventually, Damien was arrested and taken into custody, as he had clearly confessed to the crime with no hesitation. His calmness was disturbing, but it only reinforced the fact that he was fully aware of his actions and the consequences that awaited him. On December 21st, 2022, Damien Bendall admitted to ending the lives of Terry Harris, 13-year-old John Paul, 11-year-old Lacey, and Lacey's 11-year-old friend, Coney G. He also acknowledged committing an extremely serious offense against Lacey. In court, he detailed the way he carried out the attacks, making it clear that his victims had no means of defense. As a result of these deeply disturbing actions, the court sentenced him to life in prison, without any possibility of release. In January 2023, the probation office responsible for overseeing Damien's case found serious failures in the way his case had been handled. The report stated that at every stage, from the initial court reports to the monitoring in society, the probation services had failed to meet an acceptable standard and had been grossly inadequate. These failures had contributed to the horrific events that unfolded. We've reached the end of this heartbreaking story, but we must remember that every case is filled with tragedies that deeply affect lives. If you're into this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we have much more coming your way.